Thank you. Be useful just to have some feedback from each of the rooms. Tony, who's feeding back for research and innovation?
I think I offered to do that as well, if that's all right with you, Vicky.
That's fine with me, Tony.
We had plenty of research representation from the university and from the faculty, but one's gone to pick up the children and Nigel's in listening mode, but they were both very useful. So we had 5 issues, and I think we would like to make some generic comments first. There is a view that the system for obtaining sign-off and direction for commitment to funding needs a bit of streamlining so people know where to go to obtain signatures. That's just a general point. The overall view was that there was still, despite the fact that charity income has fallen relatively dramatically and will do so for the next year or two, that there was still the opportunity for a faculty and a university the size of Manchester to identify strong leaders, find the appropriate questions, get the consortium together that's necessary to be successful, and write competitive and successful grants. The key was to identify the themes and assemble the team. I think that was the comments that we would agree. There was a view that some of the people that would be needed to form these consortia would have to be temporarily released perhaps from their other contractual duties. And that was something which schools could perhaps be more proactive over. The other views that were, we looked at the challenges around institutional commitments, and we asked Nigel and Sinead for their views about that. The feeling was that with a certain amount of confidence, one could say that our success rates will not be 100%. And so that the institution at the moment could probably be confident in its commitments and not necessarily run into huge debt because the amount that will be successfully funded and therefore require institutional finance would be something that could be handled. This would obviously have to be looked at carefully, but as Nigel pointed out, if it's a mark of success and we need additional institutional commitment, then it's beholden upon our research dean to go and have some robust conversations with Graham. The overall view was that these were times of opportunity rather than disaster, and that with appropriate deep thinking about organization, we could come out of this stronger and more successful. The final point I'm going to make in this diatribe was that the realignment of charities and the opportunities that they're taking to rethink their portfolios, again, is felt to be an opportunity for us to get together. And I'm using that term both across faculties as well as across schools, and therefore to take advantage of the expertise which an institution our size offers to be even more successful. Now, Darian has made some lengthy notes on this, so we can give a more detailed record to Ian for publication. Right. I think that covers all the issues that we discussed.
Thank you very much, Tony. Very helpful feedback, not a diatribe at all. Thank you. Thank you, that's really helpful. Okay. Kay, are you picking that?
Well, I should say Mahesh really, but I won't. Mahesh gave us a little bit of insight into his working life, which was helpful. But no, it's Helen, wherever Helen's gone when she's jumped around the screen.
There, she's next to you on my screen, so Helen.
Right, okay, so we started talking about efficiencies, first in relation to the kind of reuse of material and collateral, and partly thinking about the impact on staff in terms of this lift and shift and also in terms of the courses that we have. So we talked about challenging the model that we have and have always had to teach, and looking at taking what we've learned from this particular experience into how we teach more effectively. We talked about developing courses to help students for skills and for future careers rather than just to the curriculum, and balancing that with our regulators. And then we kind of moved on in terms of that flexibility to thinking about programs and portfolio. So looking holistically across UG and PG and into CPD about how we think about the material we've got, where are the synergies. You know, we've talked a lot about stackable models in PG and how we might move from having core units across a large number of programs to then some optional units, whilst retaining a kind of need for specialisation in PG. We kind of, as part of that, one of the topics was around acknowledging that in order to make some of those changes and to embed those changes, that the management systems aren't quite in line with that ethos. So if we're thinking about making sure that funding follows activity, and also that people are recognised, we don't have good systems currently when we've got shared models of teaching and shared resources. So that would be something that we would need to kind of reinforce that message. We talked about engaging stakeholders in our development of courses and co-creation. I guess this came up in a number of ways. One was Rob was giving an example of the course that's been developed and the engagement at the Christie, and getting people excited about a course and also being part of that delivery. But then also Keith was mentioning about how we might go to events, go to the trust and talk to our portfolio, go to the science park and talk about our portfolio. And I think also how we make sure that the institutes themselves know what it is that we're delivering, and so that we can really flex and leverage some of those people and get an understanding of what they want in helping us think about our future portfolio. And then we talked a little bit about recruitment and in general feeling that we were doing things well, that there are plans in place for PG. Now we can talk more coherently around groups of programs, that we need to maintain an eye on our diversity, particularly with the loss of EU students, and looking at potential over-representation in some of our international markets, and just thinking about how we manage that more carefully. And then I think the last one was about, in terms of another market, is about, Andy was talking about people who are in work now and the changing state of the environment, and how much and how well we are, again, leveraging that kind of market and thinking about what courses we have, where we would bring professionals back into the student community, and the kind of crossover and benefit that would have for our current and younger students, for more experienced healthcare professionals and scientists. I think that was everything, Kay?
Yep, I think so.
Okay, thanks, Helen. And finally, the people group, Judith.
So Rachel Watson is going to feed back. Now, she was just having problems with her internet, so hopefully she's still around. Rachel?
Yeah, I'm still here. I've switched my camera off. I hope that helps.
Okay.
So we focused on 3 questions, one around EDI, one about future leaders and attracting the best and the brightest, and also developing our own homegrown talent. And then the final question was around learning from lockdown. So with regards to the EDI, we're very much looking forward to the institutional strategy coming out, because we feel that we need that to be able to embed our ways of working in both, so the EDI becomes a breathable, real thing that happens regardless of whether you're working in a research setting or a teaching setting. There was a discussion around expectations with regards to the EDI agenda, whether that could be built into PDRs, similar to what's been happening at senior levels in PS staff, but also something around we need some resourcing to make sure that we can embed this into the way that we work. There was a bit of a discussion about champions and whether champion was the right term. And Rachel was talking about having almost a devil's advocate, just to question what we do and why we do it, making sure that we understand the agenda and we are being open and allowing people to discuss freely any concerns that they might have. So really trying to support a cultural shift, which improves people's working and making an environment where people aren't afraid to raise queries or concerns. The other thing which Rachel wanted to highlight was there's a Value of Inclusive Leadership course, which is shortly to be online on 21st of this month, so we can flag that to our staff. With regards to future leaders, again, the idea of not only attracting people to come to Manchester, but also showing that Manchester is the best place for research to be done for those who we've already employ, either as PDRAs making that transition into fellowship, to really recognise internal talent. And sometimes that only happens when we're told by external organisations that actually our researchers in Manchester are very good at what they do. There's something there around confidence and advocacy for the people that are currently working with us, and really looking at people's potential and their trajectories. It's clear that with working towards Fellowship Academy, etc., that the desire for people to take that leap into fellowship is really high. But often the feedback is that they feel that there's lack of support from their immediate line managers or the wider group. So maybe we should be thinking with the fellowships to be looking at building teams in areas as opposed to looking at a particular individual who might have a very strong potential trajectory. And really nurturing these young fellows into leadership roles. And the final question was about what have we learned from working in lockdown. First of all, that actually we can all do it, and there's a flexibility that comes with working from home. There's concern that researchers, particularly female researchers who may have caring responsibilities, are being particularly disadvantaged by COVID. We all know that there's childcare issues, that there's homeschooling issues, and certainly many of us have older parents, so there's also COVID issues with our elderly relatives as well as our young children. So whether there's things that we can do to either support extended mat leaves or to allow some sort of catching up period. And it was discussed, Stephen was talking about researchers at other institutions where they have roving researchers, which allow projects to continue whilst individuals are on mat leave, and then it's not quite such a shock to the system when they come back. But of course, to have those sorts of schemes in place, that means it's a resource issue. And whether that's something which we can do at the moment as a university, perhaps that's more difficult, but perhaps there's some external avenues that we can explore further.
Thanks, Rachel. That's really helpful. Thank you. So really helpful feedback there. As Tony said, we have captured all of that, and what we'll do is we'll feed that through to the relevant kind of groups and areas so that we can pick up taking some actions on those areas that we identified there. So thank you very much. We've only got a couple of minutes left, but just to wrap up, I just wanted to let you just know about a couple of things and underline just where we are in relation to kind of current operations on campus, and then I'm going to pass over to Graham just to finish things off. Many of you will have seen Neil's update that came out this morning, which underlined that obviously we are still undertaking a lot of work on campus, both in research labs, and we are looking at how we can, in a COVID secure way, support some of our students who need to undertake labs for semester 2. Obviously, we've been reminding people of the need to just ensure that we are revisiting those risk assessments and making sure that we've got things as secure as we can be. We know there are some issues about demonstration of techniques and what that means in terms of social distancing, and we're working through with individuals to make sure that we've got the right guidance and support for that. We are also encouraging people to get tested. Obviously we've got testing facilities, although how long for on campus we don't yet know, but we're obviously encouraging particularly students that need to come on for face-to-face activity to take a test so that we can check whether they've got a negative outcome to that, and we're working that through. And as I say, where students have got face-to-face assessments and OSCEs, we are working that through at the moment. So I know many of you be involved in that, and thank you everybody for your work. I mean, it's anybody's guess, isn't it, where we end up with this, but I think it's probably safe to say it's not going to be an early semester 2 come back for everybody in a face-to-face way. So I think we just have to keep working through and keeping up to date with the guidance that we're getting through, and we're trying to get that out to people as fast as we can. Clearly, you know, it remains challenging, and we're going to have to just keep under review where we are in terms of particularly students and ILOs and how we can achieve those as we work through the next few weeks. Graham, do you want to just wrap up?
Yeah.
Minutes.
No, so well, just I should have said at the beginning, but Happy New Year to everyone. I can just about say that, even though it's the 18th of January and it feels like the middle of April already, given what happened. And I think we ended 2020 on a bit of an optimistic note with, you know, vaccines coming through, and then the new variant came and we had the third national lockdown about 12 hours after we all came back on the Monday. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride. I think what we need to do is reflect on, actually probably about a year ago, we had a leadership forum here where we, if you like, discussed, and then over the next month or two finalised our sort of 10-year sort of faculty framework that we obviously had to pause throughout COVID, although we used some of the key principles in that to deliver our COVID response. So it hasn't completely gathered dust. Also at the same time, you know, our sort of research expectations were sort of re-emphasised. We're just about to move into the post-current REF period, and we need to start looking at the next REF period almost straight away. And we also sent round and finalised a sort of teaching expectations document where, you know, everyone was expected to contribute to teaching. So I think we need to now sort of, if you like, unpause all of those things that we put on hold last March, and actually over this quarter, working through this leadership forum and FLT, actually make that real in terms of actionable frameworks, whether that's financial sustainability, whether it's around teaching allocation, whether it's around academic contribution. So actually what I'm very, very keen on doing is allowing people the autonomy to make those decisions within an appropriate sort of, you know, framework that we discuss here. And I think the way that we break out into different rooms across different areas and bring them back is a very, very productive way of working. So I think, you know, COVID, we don't know how long it will be with us, probably quite a long time actually in some form or another. So we need to consider that's the context within which we work, but actually not let it dominate all of our decisions. It is the third lockdown. We have a COVID secure campus. We've mitigated where we can. We will try and work through this, you know, with staff and student safety as our core priority. But actually, I think we sort of need to shift our mindset now into making ourselves sustainable in research terms, teaching and learning terms, and in financial terms. And I just look forward to working with all of you on that actually over this quarter and beyond that. So this talk and insight and discussion will be turned quite rapidly into action over this quarter. And I'll leave it at that. So thank you very much for all of your contributions.
Paul.